Good morning, Nick. How are you doing?
Good, Terry. How are you?
I'm all right. You sort of sniggered then.
What, with Love Plus One?
Yeah.
It always makes me snigger.
Does it?
I don't know why. It's a sweet song. It's like a little, it's like a kind dog outside of Tesco's.
Yeah.
You know, there's always like a little nice dog that you want to...
Oh, yeah.
You know, and I find Love Plus One a similar kind of thing.
It's
like, I'm not saying it's like a pug dog. It's more like a sausage dog.
Yeah.
You know, it's a sausage dog with a coat.
Oh, I love sausage dogs. I love sausage dogs. My mum and dad used to have one until fairly recently, and they had about 4 when I was growing up. But I mean, Love Plus One to me is a great summer song. I remember it, the summer of '82, and I remember it very, very well. For those of us that are old enough to remember that far back, so we won't dwell on that on the age thing. Anyhow,
I don't know. I think it's a positive thing.
That's a good thing. I don't mind admitting I'm 50.
The sausage dog isn't here.
I'm 54 this year. I don't mind admitting it. I don't mind admitting it. So that's good. So I mean, you're around in the 80s, 1982, with the band called Haircut 100. For those people who didn't know, but you started off at college doing art and photography, and then you started work as a commercial artist. How did you come from being a commercial artist into being a singer?
Well, I was really into the commercial art side of things, and the company that I used to work for, which was called House of Wizard, used to do record sleeves too, and they used to do things like Nazareth and Uriah Heep and quite heavy stuff. And then punk started happening, and they started to have this company called Fiction Records. They used to do their sleeves, and which was the Jam. And so I was already pogoing at that particular point, and because I was working up in town in this place, House of Wizards, and going to the places like the Vortex and all these clubs and stuff with my mates. With my mate Austin Parker, who said, "You sound like Austin Parker, even though you're Terry." And I'm imagining you now as head, because we got this in Haircut. We got this little mascot that I remember drawing when I was in commercial art, and we used to call it Terry. And he's on every sleeve, this little face, this smiling face. So I digress.
I'm not sure that's a good or a bad thing. We won't.
It's a really good thing, because I'm now, it's good. Anyway,
that's fine.
Back in the room.
That's all right. That's fine.
What was I talking about? Where was I going? I was in commercial art, wasn't I?
Yeah, you were in commercial art, and you stepped into the music business. In what?
Yeah,
was it
I did music because I liked the sleeves and sleeve design, and then I just thought it'd be really good if I got some music for the sleeves that I was designing, and then I thought, then make a record company. So made this English records, and then got a band together, and the music that I was making was really good. In fact, I made it with Rob Stroud, who was in the commercial art company House of Wizards with me, and we started a band together. And he was like, he went and bought a snare drum, and I bought a guitar, and then he went off to join. He made the Sex Gang Children. I don't know if you remember them.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
So that was the difference there between I went off and started Haircut 100, and he started Sex Gang Children.
Yeah.
And then the reason Haircut 100 happened is because there was 3 of us in the band at the time, and we all were made. You know how people are made redundant, and then they end up in the pub together. We were made single, and we ended up in the pub together. So we had time to concentrate and focus on being in a band, and we had a flat together above a flower shop in Gloucester Road in London when it was flatland, not like it is now, Millionaire Row. This was where everyone could afford to live, and so we lived above this flower shop, and that's where naively I walked into the NME and said, "Come and see our band," even though we just lived above a flower shop, really.
Wow.
We played locally. So we had to make up a gig, so my parents ran the ski club of Great Britain, which was a ski club.
Yeah.
And we played there, but he didn't come, but we printed tickets, and I think he was really impressed with this. Like, there's a band called Haircut 100.
Yeah.
Playing at the ski club of Great Britain. What? That's a bit odd.
Yeah.
So then he just came round to our flat in Gloucester Road, and he interviewed us, and then we thought, wow, that was a guy from the NME came and talked to us. We didn't realise this was really going to be an interview, really, and it was, and we had a big half-page spread in the NME just from that.
Yeah, it's amazing how that time there's a lot of bands like Spandau Ballet. They were all sort of mentioned about before anybody actually saw them, didn't they? And I remember sort of there was this big shout about Spandau, and nobody sort of knew much about them. They'd seen pictures of them, and that was about it, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, it was the time when people could have concepts, or ideas, and they just started them, and they were kind of thoughts with wings. They started to adapt, and I remember the early Spandau thing happening. The bands were started in clubs, bands were started in cloakrooms, anywhere.
Yeah.
Linen cupboards.
Yeah.
So started on gas cookers.
So whose idea was the name? Where did it come from? Because that's quite a curious name.
Kitchen. Les and Graham and I.
Yeah.
Sitting down, coming up with different names, and I said Haircut 100. And we've just laughed, really, for a while, and took it to the pub. It was our new name for the week, and tested it out on people, and they just looked puzzled and said, why? And that reaction seemed to just suit.
Yeah, well, according to my research, you had a few names before that. We had Rugby, we had Boat Party, Captain Pennyworthy, and Move in England. Yeah,
there was Pennyworthy turned into Captain Pennyworth. Jonesy jokes, the man, but we probably were, we had a name, I think it changed sometimes hourly, or it would even change because we used to take it to the Three Tons, which was our pub, and we took it there because that's where David Bowie had played when he was first starting, so we felt like this was pop history, we were taking it to the Three Tons, Bowie's hangout,
Well, yeah. And you, more or less straight away, you had hits. You had Favourite Shirts, which was 81, which went to number 4, and then the song I played a little while ago, Love Plus One, which went and sold, certified platinum, and was nominated for the Ivan Novella Award for the Best Performance in 82.
Yeah.
Overnight success.
Yeah, the most played record, I think it was, and it just got picked to the post by Golden Brown, which is, and I tip my hat to Golden Brown, and what a fantastic song. So it wasn't like losing to
rubbish.
Yeah, it was.
Wasn't Joe Dolchin Shut Up Your Face or anything like that? No.
It might have been.
No,
I can't remember it. I remember it being a really good category.
No,
it was really based on most performed work means how really popular and successful it was genuinely. And Golden Brown was. It was just. You heard that song everywhere.
I know.
And Love Plus One, it was like the summer anthem, wasn't it?
It was. Well, both of them were. And I think the Golden Brown, it was so different than what the Stranglers had done before.
Yeah.
It was like, what the Stranglers. It was almost like they'd sold out, basically.
Yeah.
I'm not saying the Stranglers did sell out.
Brown, texture like.
Absolute.
You can't imagine that, them singing that.
I know.
It was just so. Hugh Cornwall singing.
Yeah.
In a kind of like sensitive, thoughtful. It was wonderful. It was like he was sitting on a rock suddenly after punk, being reflective. It was brilliant. And you can't imagine Gene Brunel, suddenly playing along to that, but it suited them so well, didn't it?
It did. It was a cracking song. Let's not talk about the Stranglers. Let's talk about. So, why do you think? We're going to talk about the Flashback Festival in a little while. Why do you think the 80s have been so? People love it, and why it's been so endearing, and why it's the longevity of the 80s. Why do you think that?
I think for the 70s, 60s, 70s, and 80s were really strong periods, and I personally have really liked the 90s. But I think that the 80s had the creativometer was peaking, wasn't it? And production came out as well that been hanging around a bit, but it had never really gone. There were some records, like the Frankie records. You saw, and like ABC and stuff. Some Madonna things, and when Bowie was working with Nile Rodgers and all that stuff, it was just you'd never heard anything sound like this. Some of them sounded so enormous.
Yeah.
That you could never sit. I remember sitting there thinking, okay, I'm in the studio, I'm in a little 16-track. And Frankie goes to Hollywood and making records that sound like gigantic things, and you go up to the piano and go, ding, and go, wow, it was really becoming expansive,
Yeah. I mean, you had Trevor Horn behind
noise.
him.
I mean, wow. You can't just sit down and whack out Art of Noise.
I know.
You can't just accidentally sound like a Pet Shop Boys record either. It takes a lot of structure that goes into it. Sometimes all these studios that have suddenly popped up as well with these enormous budgets.
Yeah.
People learning their craft. I mean, they learned well. I mean, Julian Mendelssohn, he learned how to make that sound. And he was making that sound. So there was some amazing structures going on and people involved in it. Amazing musicians, people with loads of foresight, just going, I want to sound like this,
And it was and I remember it well because I was at college late 70s, early 80s, and I had a great time. I had the great fortune of seeing Dire Straits before they were famous. I've seen them since, and they broke the mould.
Did you see that Talking Heads tour they did?
No, I didn't see
Talking Heads.
No, I never saw the Talking Heads.
Yeah,
I missed out on all
they were touring together, which was a bit strange, but not if you go back and imagine, see how Dire Straits were, because they were like Talking Heads in the early days.
Yeah. I mean,
very simple setup,
Well, the two Knopfler brothers, and it was a strange. I mean, I was at college in Hitchin, and they came to play, and they'd just been out to American Sultans, had just hit the big time, and they'd come and played. And I've seen them a couple of times since, and they broke them up. They were so different to the other stuff that was happening in the 80s, and I think that's probably. I mean, looking at the lineup we've got for this flashbacks thing, there's so many sort of late 70s, early 80s artists, and they're all so different.
Yeah.
And
you had that. Where did the electronic thing come from? It was like it was just bubbling under, wasn't it? It was like Kraftwerk were happening, and then you had
Pet Shop Boys,
and
also Art of Noise with Ann Dudley and Trevor Horn and all those people.
They all came out because Human League suddenly went from being boiled to suddenly writing pop tunes.
Yeah.
And then Depeche Mode, who were really early, they were really Kraftwerk at first, and then suddenly they went really poppy all of a sudden, and they were writing really catchy pop songs, and they were going from, deep electronic side into pop stuff, and were suddenly on Oh Boy magazine or something. And so I remember that was the reason why our press agent came in and said, do you want to do these magazines? And we looked at them and thought, well, if it's okay for Depeche Mode, then it's okay for us.
Yeah, I mean, there was loads of them around. I remember buying Smash Hits, which of course Neil Tennant was involved in the early days. And then there used to be another one which I used to buy called The Face, which I remember around early 80s. And it was it was an arty magazine, sort of art and music mixed together, Bowie and Iggy Pop and all those sort of people. Bauhaus were in it, and it was a very, very interesting time. Anyway, I understand you're recording a new album. I
am. Just before I say that, though, I remember standing outside the NME talking to Adrian Thrills, and he said, I'd like to take you across the road because there's this new magazine starting called The Face, and I think you'd really suit it. And we went in, and I had a picture of the band taken at Shepherd's Bush Market, and I put some Pantone paper over the top of it to make it look a bit more colourful than it did, so that it would look like because it was an Afro wig centre that we were standing in front of. And I remember, I think it was Phil, the guy, I'm not sure who the guy who started it was, but he took that picture and he put it in, I think it was like the first edition of The Face. And I remember being really chuffed that we were right in there early on, because of a bit of Pantone paper.
It's amazing. I mean, and nowadays, look what you can do with photographs. Put somebody else's head on somebody else's body, and
we're all on Instagram,
Crazy times, isn't it? Yeah. So this you got a new album that's due out. Is it this year, 2016?
I'm at the moment. I'm just trying to get the funds together to mix it, and because do I crowdfund it or do I, go into getting the money together? Because everybody still wants to Obviously,